Salmon in 1818. They fell in love and they received a dot or a dowry. And that dowry, luckily for them, was the Clos Saint-Hilaire. And the Clos Saint-Hilaire is one of the 13 greatest vineyards in Champagne. And it's in Marais-sur-Aille, and those of you who know about Clos, it's a Grand Cru vineyard, Pinot Noir dominant, and that was their gift. And from there, they built one of the greatest champagne houses that exists today. But you only know about Billecart-Salmon if you circulate in the kind of places where you'll find Billecart-Salmon. They don't advertise, you won't find them on glossy magazines, you only know about them because you're kind of in the club. Their volume, it's about 1/9 of Dom Perignon, and their secret is that today they're still family owned, 202 years later. So Antoine Billecart is a very good friend of mine. He's the 7th generation, the playboy of the two brothers, going around the world, or when he could, traveling and telling the Billecart story in the best resorts, the best hotels that there are. Then there's his brother Frederick, who never leaves Marais-sur-Aille. And then they have Mathieu, the 8th generation, who's not even 40 yet, who's taking over the mantle as we speak. And that's the symbol of their supreme quality. Billecart is all about purity. It's all about excellence, and that comes through in their champagnes. Their champagnes are meant to be aperitif champagnes, but they are just all about keeping that quality, keeping that family knowledge. And the story I always remember was being with Antoine once. I think we were in Raffles in Singapore, and he was doing a bit of a do. And he was saying that about 10 years prior, they'd been tasting their vintages. And him and his brother had been like, this vintage is, I don't think we can put it in the vintage. This isn't working. The Pinot Noir's not right. The Chardonnay's not right. And their grandfather was there. And he was like, well, I actually remember this back in the 50s, a similar vintage, I think 51. And actually that turned out to be one of our greatest vintages. Bottle it, leave it, and let it go. And that kind of family knowledge, it doesn't happen so much in Champagne now, because as you know, through the 70s and 80s, there has been a kind of corporatization of this place, and you know, it has kind of grown where that family tradition and that family knowledge has been lost. And so Billecart-Salmon are becoming like an island in that sort of terrain. And I just thought I'd tell you a bit about Champagne. As you all know, it's one of the oldest wines from the Roman era, and Champagne as a region should never be allowed to make wine. And as you know, poor Dom Perignon he was never trying to make a sparkling wine. He was trying to make a wine and remove that kind of pale pinkness that he was getting with the high acidity. And as you know, his problem was all about, he was trying to use the glass of the time, which was the Venetian hand-blown glass. And so his bottles kept popping. And then at the same time, around that sort of 18th century, late 18th, early 19th century, we had the Industrial Revolution going on. And so at the same time, we were discovering in the north of England, toughened glass. And so that combination of tough glass led to the wine that we know, which is Champagne with the secondary fermentation. But with Billecart-Salmon, the secondary fermentation is not about the bubbles or the bead, it's just about that relentless search for the finest wine that they can possibly find. And so if you've still got your aperitif, or when you had it, you'll be drinking it, and you'll see with the rosé as well, the bead, the fizz disappears relatively quickly, although it'll stay spritzy on the palate, because that's how they find that purity. They're trying to make a great wine. And whenever I drink the vintages, I've brought all the vintages in for the America's Cup, so we've got it all here now. I always have the vintage actually, I'll sometimes decant, and I'll often have it in an actual Chardonnay glass and drink it in that way. So that's the story of Billecart-Salmon, and I could talk for hours, so I'm going to sit down and let you eat. Dhall and Nash, we love wine, we know everything about wine. We have just invested in 2,000 square meters of warehouse in Auckland, all at 13 degrees centigrade. We carry over 2,000 wines. We've got everything from Aubert de Villane, who's a personal friend with Romney Conti. We've got Petrus. We've got the greatest American wines. We've got the greatest French wines, Super Tuscans. We've got it all, and I'm investing and investing and investing. So a bit like Billecart-Salmon, if you hear the words Dhall and Nash, it's because you've met me or you've been somewhere where you've met. You're in a very special club now, So I just want to let you know that's how Dhall and Nash operates. So enjoy your meal and we'll see you soon.
Is very well known for limestone soils, which we know is perfect for Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, and then also set about actually caring for the vines and showing the vines the love that they needed to be able to produce that. As I talked to Andy earlier, I had a very famous winemaker called C.P. Lin, who basically started making the wines for them in the late 90s, early 2000s. And he carried on until 2013 and basically took Mountford to the levels that it's at. He produced some of the best Chardonnay, in my opinion, in New Zealand, and the Pinot Noir that we're going to try tonight, the 2010 Gradient, has stood up to the best French wines and has beaten them. It's as much an attribution to him as a winemaker as it is to the site and producing what it does. At the moment, the vineyard is about 50% Pinot Noir, so we're still really sticking to that, and we produce 4, sometimes 5 Pinot Noirs from the block each vintage, and that's mainly to show the terroir of the site and to show how simple adjustments and simple things like vineyard aspect, right down to the soils, the clays, the limestone rich soil that we have, and how they affect the finished wine and bottle. The Chardonnay itself, just again down to the spectacular site. It's in Waipara, but in my mind as a winemaker, it's its own little microclimate. It's its own little area, and to me it's very special. It's something that I'm really proud to be able to make, and to be able to show you guys tonight. I haven't actually made any of the wines that we're going to be drinking tonight, so say what you want. Going forward, I hope to continue the legacy and to be able to show the absolute premium level that Mountford can make going forward.
So do you want to tell us about that first wine? Because then Corey's going to come out and
Sure.
we're going to want some food later.
We first off, we're going to have the